Well, howdy, folks. Today is February 26, 2023. And you know how they say necessity is the mother of invention? Well, impending snowstorm is the mother of getting the snow blower fixed. They're calling for up to a foot of snow Monday into Tuesday. So yeah, it's time to get this going. Unfortunately, I did not do a video of the disassembly. So hopefully you can reverse engineer this video to see how it comes apart. The new bearing, the bearing housing, and the raised edge points away from the shroud. And if you look at the bearing, it's also got a protruding end on it, which also goes away from the shroud. It kind of fits together like this. You have to kind of tilt it to get it in there going with this belt tightener, and you're going to want to make sure you've got this centered very well. You might think that tightening the bolts down or the nuts down is going to center it, but that's not always the case, so just pay attention when you're putting that back together. These nuts are lock thread, so you don't have to put anything on them to keep them from vibrating loose, and they are, if I remember correctly, 1/2 inch. It's been a while since I took this apart, and it's the first one I've done, so just want to make sure we get that centered very well. And we're going to have to recenter it. And you just kind of want to make sure the bearing is the same distance around the lip of the bearing housing. Keeper, whatever you like to call it. Otherwise you're going to put undue stress on the bearing itself. Because I'm anal, I'm going to get my little horseshoeing hammer. And just make sure we're good. Oh boy. Okay, that looks pretty darn good. That locks it in pretty well. You don't have to get crazy with it. You know, as far as tightening these down, I have no clue what the torque spec is if you're that kind of guy or gal. So now we're going to spin it around and put the auger and the impellers and stuff back in. Be right back. Okay, so now we're going to put our auger and impellers and stuff back in. And the impeller is the same shape as the shaft, of course, so it doesn't matter which way it goes on, and it is shouldered here, so it can only go on so far, and that's it. And if you saw the video that I made last, there are no bearings at the ends. There are plastic cups with a clip that holds them together. So I took that all off. You take out these pins, you can take all of these blades out and grease this shaft because there are no grease fittings. So I thought while it's apart I'll do it, so I did it. And basically once you have it this far, you're just going to slide your shaft through your brand new bearing. So once you get your auger and the impellers and everything installed, and you have your shaft going through the back bearing, these 1/2 inch bolts, 2 on each side, are what hold the nylon bearing cups in, so to speak. So basically, and never tighten anything down till you have all the bolts started. So you can fit your hand in here to manipulate this to start. Start the second one, spin it around, do the same thing, and then tighten them down again. I have no clue if there's a torque spec, but I just make them snug enough to know they're not going to fall out. Then I'm going to go around to the back and spin the shaft to make sure that we have ample clearance and we don't have anything rubbing like we did before we started this process. Alright, looks good. Let's give it a little wiggle test. It's all snug, I don't feel any movement at all, so I think we're in good shape. So let's spin it around and put the pulley back on. Okay, and here's our shaft from the auger, or the impeller. I get them confused, but it's one of the two. Then our pulley, and this pulley seems to be ambidextrous. I don't believe there's an inside or an outside to it. But typically when you take things apart, there's going to be what they call a witness mark. So if you look at it, you can see here, this is how it was originally assembled. This piece has these three little wings on it, which are going to fit into the holes in the pulley. So if we do it the way that it came apart, it's going to go back together this way, and I really don't need the belt bothering me. So to make life a bit easier, we're going to put this on first. And then we'll put our pulley on. And you are going to have to pull this out of your way. We have our thick flat washer and our bolt. Now there was Loctite on this when I took it apart, so I don't even think I have Loctite here. As a matter of fact, I know I don't. So I'm going to assemble it with the original Loctite and let it do its thing. Half-inch bolt. I can tell that that Loctite that was in there is still going to work, because I thought it was tight, but it wasn't. So yeah, we're in good shape. It's all quiet, nothing's banging and rubbing. I can look through the chute. We have plenty of clearance now. So yeah, we're in good shape. We'll put the belt back on here. Now I know why. Don't do what I just did. Now I know why I left the belt on the pulley. Again, it's been a while since I took this apart. You're not going to get the belt back on if you put the pulley on first, because, let me show you why, it's got this. And this is to keep the belt from flying around. So, again, don't do what I did. Put your belt on before you put the pulley on. So that kind of makes it a pain in the neck if you got to change a belt at any point in time. And I wish I would have thought about that, because I would have bought a new belt since it's apart. And boy, I hate taking bolts out 3,000 times. But my bad, what can you do? Alright, so now we're good to go. Alright, let's get set up for reattaching this to the blower, and we'll be right back. Alright guys, don't be like me. I took this apart quite a while ago. I lost the 4 bolts, unbelievably enough. The 4 bolts that hold the shroud part to the engine part. So it's been a long time since I paused this video, you know, what seems like a second ago to you. But I had to find 4 new bolts, retap the threads to 3/8 inch, and yeah, I think now we're ready to put it back together. Socket size is still going to be 1/2 inch, and it gets tipsy when the shroud is off of the engine assembly because of the weight distribution. So what we're going to do now is pull this back together, and I doubt you can see what I'm doing, so let me move the camera. But what we need to do is get the engine side fairly well leveled off, and then we're going to position the shroud back to where it needs to be. Now, if you see here, there's a little plastic, that's what I mean about this thing being tipsy. There's a little plastic pulley here that this cable goes around, and that's what engages the impeller. So we're going to put the belt back over the top, which is the engine side. And then the cable goes in front of the belt. And hopefully I can get this hooked back together easily enough. Then we're going to pull the pulley that's on the shroud over enough to get the spring back on. And I'm not going to lie, this is going to be a challenge. So I'm not going to make you watch me do this. We'll be right back. So after fighting with the spring, I found it's much easier if you put the hook end, the open end, in this direction, facing towards the engine. You can get the spring to maneuver around easy enough to get it on. Make sure your belt is on the inside of this pulley and not the outside. Otherwise you're going to be bummed out when you get it all set up and try to start it up and do your thing. So now we have to get this back into place, and it has to be these, hopefully you can see this, these wings have to be on the inside of this. I guess I could have kept the video rolling. It wasn't that bad to get that lined up and bolted down. So the bolts are in, the 4 bolts that hold the shroud on, and that's all good to go. And now we're going to put on the cover for the belts. And that's going to go down here, like so. And they are going to be 3/8 screws, bolts. They're sort of screw bolts. So we'll get those in there, get that snugged up. And then the other side, I kind of think I remember using an extension and a universal because of the angle. It's all bad. And yeah, I'm probably not going to edit much out of this video because I want everyone to see the painstaking effort it takes to do this job. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not super easy either. Alright, so our belt cover is on, and now we're going to put on our chute and get this thing fired up and see how we do. So basically when you put the chute on, this bolt here, which I'm going to put a little bit of grease on just to make life a bit easier. So there's a square metal block here that goes inside of here, and of course this part of the chute is going to go down here. You probably didn't see what I was saying earlier. This square block goes into here, and the round part of the chute goes over this part down here. Don't worry about the rod, the adjustment rod, because it moves. Just make sure that you've got it in place enough so that this bolt goes through the hole in the chute mount. And this goes on the bolt that holds the chute to the mounting bracket. You get that fairly snug by hand. And what I was saying about the chute adjustment rod, it slides in and out, so you don't have to worry about that so much. I did put a little grease on this. It was getting a little rusty, and that bums me out. So once you get that chute in, or the adjustment rod, you'll see that hole, and that's where your cotter pin goes. So I need to get a new cotter pin because I destroyed the one that I took out. And I doubt that I've got the correct size cotter pin because that's a pretty small hole. So I'm going to have to split the cotter pin in half. Find the hole. Get it lined up. I'm not seeing it. And then we will bend the cotter pin around, and we're going to cut off the excess so it doesn't bind up. If I can find my cutters, which are right there, big surprise. And then we'll test that and see how it works. Alright, so we're in good shape there. So this thing's only been used, I think, twice this entire year. So that means that it sat all summer and pretty much a majority of the winter. But we're going to fire it up and engage the impeller and see what happens. Turn the choke on, press the primer a few times, the key is in. And let's see what happens. Alright, so it looks like we're successful. I had a wire tie on the auger lever to keep it engaged so I could come around to the front without, you know, looking stupid trying to hold it. And so yeah, no noise. Couldn't even tell it was engaged, honestly, other than the little lag in the engine. But I think we're good to go. I know this video is pretty pathetic and it's backwards, but hopefully it can help somebody out. And if you have any questions, comments, or complaints, give them a post because I try to reply to everyone. Guys, enjoy your Sunday and we'll talk soon. Take care now.